So Lies of P is getting a DLC. It's called Lies of P Overture. Basically, P finds a device of some kind that allows him to travel back in time, and he's going to go back to the pre-Puppet Frenzy. So Puppet Frenzy is the kind of when everything in the city fell apart, and you're kind of that's why when you're going through the game, everything's kind of messed up. So, but this is going to be pre that, so you're going to see the city in its former glory. You're going to be joined by a legendary stalker, I think they call her. Her name is Leah, or maybe Leia. I'm not sure. It's Lea. My sister's name is Lea, and she pronounces it Leah. So I'm going to say Leah, but I don't know. Could be Leia. I don't know. Maybe I speak with a British accent. So it's coming in the summer, this summer, 2025. We don't know have an exact date yet. But what's really interesting about this, beyond the fact that, you know, you're going to be able to explore more of the city, you're going to be able to see it kind of in its pre-collapse glory. What makes this really interesting, and what most people are talking about, is the addition of difficulty settings. So the original game, did not come with difficulty settings. A lot of Souls-likes do not. Some do, but most of them don't. And this one did not. But then since the game came out, the developers have been listening to feedback from players, and they decided, you know what, we actually want more people to be able to play the game. So yeah, we're going to add difficulty settings. So the original setting of the game is now going to be called Legendary Stalker. There's going to be an easier mode called Awakened Puppet. And then there's going to be an easiest mode, which I guess is kind of the story mode, called Butterfly's Guidance. So you're going to be able to choose which of those three you want, so you can choose how easy or hard that you want it. Another thing that they're adding is that the bosses, you can go back and you can play old bosses from the original game or the ones from the DLC, and you're going to be able to play them with 5 different difficulties. So you're going to have the original 3 difficulties that are in the game, but if you're able to beat it on the highest, then you can actually unlock a 4th difficulty. And if you can beat that, you can get a 5th difficulty. So these things are actually, you know, so for people who want more difficulty, that's going to be an option as well. Now, not when you play the game is kind of I don't know if it's going to be a boss rush mode, or, you know, you go back into where you fought the boss and you can fight him again and choose a difficulty. But yeah, if you were looking for an extra challenge, that's going to be there as well. So a little bit of something for everyone, which is really, really cool. We also know that there is a sequel currently in the works. Whether that's going to follow P or somebody else, we're not sure. I know that there is a reference to Dorothy from Wizard of Oz in the game. So it looks like maybe she'll either be more involved or maybe she could be a main character. We don't know. But it is interesting that they are going to be expanding on the IP and exploring these other kind of I don't know. These really aren't fairy tales, are they? In the traditional sense. I mean, they kind of are, but a little more contemporary fairy tales, like I suppose you would call them. So I think that's really, really cool. I love the idea that they are adding difficulty settings. One of the comments that I saw on a Reddit page discussing it, I thought was really interesting, where the person said that normally they're the kind of person that says, oh, you know, the game shouldn't be, you know, it should just follow the people's vision. But they actually liked the way that Lies of P is doing it, because this isn't something where, you know, you're making it easier and then you're making it more difficult by, increasing the boss's life, or, you know, kind of these artificial kind of things to stretch, you know, increasing their damage, increasing their life, but otherwise it's the same thing. They're actually creating the game hard first and designing it around that, and then finding ways to make it easier. So that, you know, I've seen a lot of people that actually appreciate that approach to design, as opposed to kind of creating the middle mode first and then, you know, finding ways to make it more difficult by, you know, decreasing your survivability or something like that. So I think that's really cool. I think a lot of games could benefit from something like this. Personally, it made me think about Claire Obscura. A lot of people, you know, have talked about how, you know, some people find it really difficult with the parry system and stuff like that. But, you know, it made me think about, like, yeah, you could make a game like that. And online right now, it's kind of a trend to make fun of the way a lot of the enemies use kind of feints and whatnot to kind of screw up with your timing. There's one enemy in particular that comes to mind where they kind of walk up to you and they do this attack, and depending on if they raise their sword kind of lower or higher, depends if they're going to be going into a 3 attack combo, or if they're going to be going from the first attack into one of those chroma parries that you need to do. And it's like a split second that, you know, it makes the difference between which one they're going to go into. So when I see them walking up, I'm like, oh crap, I need to pay attention. Which one are they going into? And I get it right maybe 75% of the time, but 25% of the time I screw up. I can see a game where they're like, okay, in easy mode, we're just going to limit them to one attack thing, so it's going to make it easier on players because, you get rid of some of that fainting and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of an interesting idea, build the game as difficult and then find ways to kind of make it easier for the player, increase these parry windows, maybe take out certain attack combos and whatnot, some of the longer ones or some of the more difficult ones. So I think it's a really good design. I think it's a really great idea. Kudos to them for trying to, make the game more accessible to more people. I think that's really, really cool. And I will say that I feel strangely odd about this one. I've expressed before in the past that I'm not a fan of taking classic, not really IPs, but literature or things like that. Like, for instance, God of War. I had a really hard time getting into the God of War games just because, to me, the idea of like, oh, we're going to create our character is stronger than Zeus. I don't know. To me, that kind of turned me off where, it's kind of like, it feels, you have these thousands of years of I don't know what you would call it, but lore or mythology or whatever, and then I'm gonna do it one better. I don't know. To me, that kind of turned me off. But I do like the fact that I do like the way they're doing it here, where it is very much a twisted tale of Pinocchio, but they do kind of make it their own. They're not calling him Pinocchio most of the time. They're just calling him P. They're changing the name slightly, or so the references are very obvious, but they're not saying like, no, this is the story of Pinocchio. It's like, no, this is a parallel story. I don't know. Personally, for me, it's more palatable. I think it's really cool. But yeah, credit to them. Good job, guys.